So, really, without any word about this movie, Robert Rodriguez drops another movie of his. And is it good? Find out next. How's it going, fellas cinephiles? This is Dominic from Film Overload, the channel where we talk about movies, pop culture, and everything in between. Once again, I went out to my local cinema and I saw the newest Robert Rodriguez film, HYPNOTIC. This is a sci-fi thriller movie, I would say, and it really taps into that Christopher Nolan type kind of film. But unfortunately, I think Robert was just a little bit too overambitious with this film. Now, don't get me wrong, there are some redeeming qualities to this movie, but unfortunately, the good qualities of this movie just get completely drained out by questionable decision making from a storytelling perspective. I thought this movie was a little bit of a mess, personally. Again, there are some really strong qualities to this movie, and I could really see what Robert Rodriguez was going for, but in the end, the execution of some of the ideas and themes that he was trying to convey in this movie was just completely lacking. I really thought that the structure of this movie was pretty poor, which is ultimately what hurt the overall final product, in my honest opinion. Now, the story itself is very, very interesting. In fact, there was a couple of instances throughout the course of this film where I really was wondering what was going to happen next. I think Robert really created a interesting world for this film, and I think he really tried to create something new and original and fresh, but unfortunately it just kind of felt pretty familiar, aka Memento and Inception and just movies like that. It felt very similar to those films, and I wish that we would have gotten something a little bit different and maybe something a little bit more up to date, so to speak. Those intense sci-fi psychological thrillers really seem to kind of follow the same beats, and I was just hoping for something a little bit more different this time around, but unfortunately I just didn't get that. Now, for me personally, the writing was a little bit subpar, especially towards the end of the film when things get more revealed. I wish the writing was just a little bit stronger, and maybe it would have helped form a more stable foundation for this film. The film has a lot of up and down moments. Personally, there was a lot of good things, but unfortunately there were just some things that just did not make a lot of sense and ultimately ended up confusing me. The one thing, however, that the script does do very, very well is create very interesting characters and ones that you are interested in and invested in the entirety of the film. You really want to know what these characters are going through and where they are going to turn to next. And I really think that the characters in this movie were actually written very well. And speaking of characters, Ben Affleck once again delivers a really solid performance. I've said this numerous times, he is a very solid actor, and an actor I think that could rack up a lot of accolades if given the right script. And again, he just plays a really casual kind of police character kind of in this movie, a character that you can follow, a character that you can root for, and a character that just goes through a lot of emotions through this movie. And if you see the movie, you'll understand why. But once again, Ben Affleck really shows his chops, not just serious roles, but roles like these where they're not as intense and more action heavy. And being the former Batman in the DCEU, Ben also flexes his physical ability as well in this movie, as there is a good helping of action and stunt work throughout the course of this film. Even the supporting characters in this movie were pretty good as well. I really thought that the supporting characters were good. They weren't great, but they were good. And I think with the supporting characters, with Ben Affleck, really made for a very interesting pool of characters. And again, while not perfect characters, they were characters that were good enough to follow throughout the course of the 90-minute film. And I really think that characters were the thing that really drove this movie from beginning to end. And unfortunately, even the good characters throughout the course of this movie just couldn't really justify the main flaws that I personally saw with the storytelling. And just a quick note, the storytelling had some good traits, some really good traits. The elements and the main themes of the movie were really there. The characters I just mentioned were just really interesting. Unfortunately, the way Robert and his crew tell the story really hinder both the story's main themes and elements as well as the characters eventually, really making for this movie to be one kind of frustrating mess that really had a lot of potential. Another really interesting side note is that I really enjoyed the hypnosis element and like the sci-fi kind of thriller vibes that this movie really gives off, and pair that with some really solid action sequences and some interesting twists. The filmmaking in general in this movie was really well done. The movie is very well made, but unfortunately the story was just not told, and I really just think that this movie had a lot of potential that Robert just kind of let go at the wayside. But overall, I thought Hypnotic was a very interesting movie. But again, unfortunately, the way that Robert and his crew tell this story really left a lot of potential at the table. I really enjoyed what Robert was trying to go for here, but again, it felt a little bit too familiar with movies like Memento and Inception. It just felt like a ripoff, so to speak. Not so much a ripoff, but it just felt very Christopher Nolan heavy, which unfortunately kind of left again some of that potential that Robert could have really instilled in this movie. If you liked what you see here, be sure to hit the like button, hit the subscribe button as well, and turn on the post notifications so that you guys can get notified every single time I post a video. You can follow me on Letterboxd, which is right here. I post all of my movie reviews on Letterboxd. It helps me keep track of movies that I have watched, movies that I haven't watched, and movies that I will watch. And I think you guys would benefit greatly from this app and this website if you're indeed lovers of cinema like myself. As always, guys, happy movie watching. Take care.